I gotta say, it is great to be in the incredible Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and in just 2 days, we're gonna turn Pennsylvania red, and we're gonna take this country back and make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. Now, I want to give a shout out to some of our special guests here. In particular, I came out here and I'm like, who the hell spoke before me that was 6'8"? And the answer is Glenn Youngkin. Glenn, thank you so much for your leadership in Virginia. We've got the great Governor Doug Burgum of North Dakota. Doug, thank you. My dear friend and colleague, Senator Bill Hagerty from Tennessee. We've got the incredible, I didn't really realize we had Congressman Byron Donalds. Byron, thank you, man. God bless you. And his Florida colleague, Congressman Mike Waltz. Mike, thank you, man. We got Lawrence Tabas, the Pennsylvania GOP chair. Lawrence, where are you? Somewhere. Maybe he's backstage. Maybe he went to the next event. We've got former Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Matt, thank you, man. We have Chad Wolf in the house, former DHS Secretary. Thank you, Chad. Man, we have the whole crew here. We got David Bossie. David, good to see you, man. And of course, last but certainly not least, my favorite person, no offense to any of you, is my best friend and my lovely wife, Usha. Thank you, honey, for being here. Well, you know, I was in Las Vegas a couple of days ago, and we arrived at the airport at the same time as Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. He's, of course, my Democratic counterpart. No, it's okay. It's all right. You know, I was thinking to myself that, you know, I actually feel a little bad for Tim Walz. So I'm going to be bipartisan here, maybe unexpectedly, especially for the cameras in the back. But, you know, Tim Walz, I think, has the toughest job in American politics. Think about this. You have had, I'm sure, tough days at work. Your hands hurt, your back's tired, but think about it. You have never had to go out there and try to convince the American people that Kamala Harris can be the president of the United States. That's tough. That's tough work. You gotta think about this. Tim Walz has to go out there and try to persuade the people of Pennsylvania that Kamala Harris is going to fix the affordability crisis that her policies created. He's got to go out there and convince the people that Kamala Harris has all of a sudden got religion on border security, despite the fact that she for 4 years bragged about opening the southern border. He's got to go persuade people that Kamala Harris has the competence to steer the world through these troubled times. And, you know, it's kind of interesting. If he's got the toughest job in American politics, I think I've got the easiest job in American politics, because you know what I get to talk about? I get to talk about the fact that when Donald J. Trump was president, inflation was at 1.5%. Americans were making good money. When Donald Trump was president, we had the fastest rising take-home pay in 40 years in the United States of America. When Donald Trump was president, the world was more peaceful and our allies were much more secure, and so were we. And of course, when Donald J. Trump was president, the border was secure and illegal aliens knew they couldn't take advantage of the United States of America. That's a pretty good track record, I think. And here's the one thing I'll say. Look at me. I'm being just friendly to Tim Walz, and I'm going to be friendly to Kamala Harris. The one thing I'll say for Kamala Harris is that every time she does an interview, I think we pick up about 100,000 votes. Because now I remember when Kamala's got a teleprompter in front of her, she's got all these slogans and she makes all these promises that she's somehow going to do something different over the next 4 years that she hasn't done over the last 4 years. She'll stand up there and without an ounce of shame, Kamala Harris will say, on day one, we're going to make that border more secure. Or on day one, she'll say, we're going to tackle the affordability crisis affecting our fellow Americans. And I think all of us with an ounce of common sense are saying, Kamala, Day one was 1,400 days ago. What the hell have you been doing the whole time? She pretends that she didn't cast the deciding vote on trillions of dollars in new spending, but check the tape. We know that she did. She pretends that she didn't brag that she was going to open the border, but remember, the minute she became the border czar, 93 executive orders, they bragged about undoing Donald Trump's successful border policies, and now our fellow Americans are dealing with the consequences. Every single time that Kamala Harris promises you that she's going to do something, ask Kamala Harris, what have you actually done? And the answer is that she's made this country weaker. She has made our border open. She has made groceries and housing unaffordable for our fellow citizens. And I think, and I've learned this from my running mate, that in just 3 days, the people of Pennsylvania are going to say to Kamala Harris, you are fired. Go back to San Francisco where you belong. We don't need you in the Oval Office. But as much, they must have had an open bar here before I showed up. You guys are having a good time. But remember, as much as she says things that they normally sound pretty bad, but if you don't think too hard about them, maybe they sound okay. When she's got a teleprompter, every now and then Kamala Harris will do an interview. Now, she usually only does softball interviews. She doesn't do the hostile media that me and President Trump do, the friendly American media. They just throw softballs at Kamala Harris. But I know that we're in a proud baseball town, and all of you appreciate that. The problem with softball interviews is you've still got to be able to hit the softball. And I don't know that Kamala Harris could hit a T-ball based on what we've seen from these interviews. Now, look, you're never going to hear me complain about this job because it is the honor of my life to be able to ask you to make me your next Vice President of the United States. It's an incredible thing. Think about this. Think about this. This is the greatest country in the world. I grew up in a poor family, and now I'm here 2 days before an election asking all of you to vote for me to be your next Vice President of the United States. That's a great testament to the United States of America. So you will never hear me complain about this job, save this one time. There is one act of service that I engage in for all of you, and it's that I watch Kamala Harris do her interviews so that you don't have to. And a couple weeks ago, Kamala did an interview with The View. She did an interview with The View, and remember, we need you as sharp as possible over the next 2 days. So do not go and watch this interview. You'll lose about 20 IQ points. But again, I watched it so that you didn't have to. And what she said in this interview sort of blew up all the scripted teleprompter speeches that Kamala Harris gives. They asked her, name one thing that you would have done differently from Joe Biden. One thing in 4 years, open borders, sky-high grocery prices, and she said, nothing comes to mind. Nothing comes to mind. Now, to be fair, that could be the campaign slogan of the Harris-Walz campaign, nothing comes to mind. But think about this. Think about this. In 15 seconds, she gave lie to the entire heart of her campaign, because as much as she goes around and as much as the media helps her tell this story that somehow she's going to be the candidate of change, we know that Kamala Harris is the candidate of more of the same. More of the same of our fellow citizens not being able to afford groceries. More of the same of our young people not being able to afford the American dream of homeownership. More of our communities flooded with fentanyl brought in by the Mexican drug cartels. And I think in 2 days, Pennsylvania, are we ready to take this country in a different direction? Are we ready to make Donald Trump the next president of the United States? I think so. You know, the thing that the media never tells the truth about this. They don't tell the truth about a lot. And you know, the corporate media, I think they see themselves as allies of Kamala Harris rather than as people who ought to tell the truth. But look, some of this stuff is easy, right? Sometimes public policy is really hard and really complicated, but when you have a vice president who comes in and says that we want to make it harder for American energy workers and American energy companies to produce energy, shockingly, energy goes through the roof. And now we know, by the way, that if the guy who's driving your groceries to the grocery store is paying 45% more for diesel, then all of us are paying more for groceries. If the guy who's delivering the lumber to the job site is paying 40% more for gasoline, then all of us are paying more for the stuff that's built at that job site. And so whenever Donald Trump is asked, what is our plan to lower costs for American consumers? What is our plan to lower costs for American citizens? It is very simple. Drill, baby, drill. We got to unleash American energy. And I know there's a little bit more of the energy economy in the western part of the state than the eastern part of the state, but all Pennsylvanians are going to benefit if we have a president who says, you know what, we're going to stop buying oil and gas from tin-pot dictators all over the world. We're going to buy it from Pennsylvania workers, from Pennsylvania territory. We got plenty of it right here. Let's get it out of the ground. And there are so many contrasts, so many obvious things that Kamala Harris should have done, or maybe she even did the opposite of what she should have done. And you compare it to the record of Donald Trump, and you realize why President Trump was able to deliver low prices and fast rising take-home pay. It's common sense economic policy. Think about this. Kamala Harris is the first candidate I've ever seen who will go around and brag that she wants to raise your taxes. Meanwhile, she'll reward foreign corporations and foreign companies